New data mines, class tokens, Goblin Reputation, heroic Molten core, and no. Another bomb just hit terrible. So anyways, back to the news. New epics and profession updates, and so much more on top of that. We are getting a Phase 4 video dropping this week from the developers of World of Warcraft. On top of that, the release date is very likely July 25th. Agron cannot confirm nor deny this, but I expect the video that comes out this Thursday or Friday or even today will be about Phase 4's release, and it will be July 25th. Now back to the broadcast. Starting with perhaps the most interesting of items on this list is the Goblin Reputation, otherwise what I believe to be the Undermine Reputation. I data mined this about a week ago, and at the time, I assumed there was going to be a brand new Goblin Reputation, completely fresh because of the Undermine Tarnished Reel. But thinking about it some more, it does look like it may be tied to some of the other original existing Goblin Reputations, for example, the Steamwiddle Cartel or Ratchet. I can't say for sure, but due to the usage of the South Seas, Undermine, Kazan, and other various mentions, I believe it is going to be a new reputation. Specifically, I believe it's going to be a new supply crate drop, because we did undermine a new supply crate as well to go along with all of this goblin information. So these items overall do look quite interesting across the board, mostly themed around goblin stuff such as the Stick of the South Seas, Goblin Clothesline, and things of that nature. The most interesting of items added is the Green Goblin Shredder model, which I believe is a mount you can unlock from the tarnished Undermine Real currency, and the rep vendor picks Zizzax from the Undermine Reputation. I can't say for sure that this is a mount or you can unlock it as a mount from a vendor, but I believe everything points toward this location, and it seems to be the most logical, or at least the most likely. I could talk about this reputation more, but realistically, it's very likely just a continuation of the supply crate system. Even if the currency is tied to bosses or whatnot, I do believe the supply crates tie in line with this to make the reputation more organic or just more fun for the player base, because I don't think anybody really likes the supply crate reputation system at all. And if you do like it, you're lying. Moving on to the second item on that list is the class tokens. Now we knew we were getting class tokens for Molten Core, nobody's really surprised about this. What is interesting is that it is the same as before, except now that there are 8 token pieces instead of just a regular 3. In previous level up raids, you had 3 token pieces total. Now in Molten Core and Onyxia, you have a total of 8. And that is a lot of goddamn token pieces. How many will drop from the bosses? Will Heroic have an effect on how many tiered pieces drop? That's a question people are asking that we don't have an answer to as of now in this exact moment. But there are 8 pieces. It's gonna be interesting. I assume every boss will drop 3 to 4 pieces, and then we'll go from there. We'll find out more in the coming weeks, or it may be a surprise and we'll find out once Molten Core is live in Phase 4, sometime in July. They're split in the same way that tier tokens have been split in the past. There's nothing changed here. Priest, Warlock, Mage for one of them, Warrior, Rogue, and Druid for the next, and then Hunter, Shaman, and Paladin for the third. Now these 3 together, it's the standard, nobody's surprised. Since we just discussed the class tokens, we're going to talk about the new recolored tier 1 sets. This is actually amazing news because it means we'll be getting recolored tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 sets. Well, that depends if we go into TBC with the next season. But these sets, as of right now for Molten Core and Onyxia, they're actually quite cool. Not every set is cool. For example, the Paladin teal set is f***ing hideous. God, that is a terrible color. You look like a god banana in blue. As far as some of the other design choices, the Rogue armor coloring is hideous. Rogues went from having the cool, red, mysterious, assassination feeling theme to now you're a giant walking banana. Terrible design choice. Give them a more unique, flavorful color. And the best change overall is the Shaman set with the Earth Fury Resolve set in particular. It looks amazing. I'm really excited for all my Shaman friends to actually have a really cool looking set. But we're not done with Molten Core and Onyxia just yet, because there's even more on the table. For example, we have all the new epics that have been data mined so far. Now, this is limited as of now. We haven't seen every epic or all the stats for them yet. For example, Glacier and Lacia, the new Druid epic questline, similar to Benediction and Rock Dalar, still has no stats as of now. but that will be coming in the future. But some of the new items they added, for example, the key to the city from Onyxia is an amazing staff that is way better than what is in Molten Core as of this moment. That will change in the future because the Molten Core weapons, most of them have not been updated. Some of them have been, but as Agron said in a tweet previously, pretty much everything from Molten Core is probably wrong. Now, despite knowing that there are some cool items and stuff coming, keep in mind that most of these new epics and new data mine changes are incorrect as of this moment. I'm not going to go too deep in depth on the stats of them, because I don't want to talk about an incorrect stat system or incorrect item effect or whatnot, because until Agron essentially confirms these items, they're all placeholder as of now. Professions, on the other hand, have had some massive changes happen to them. I am going to cover the professions here, because the profession changes seem to be legitimate, because the changes and damage increases and item effects are actually pretty massive in comparison to the Molten Core items. For example, the Arcanite Reaper is an amazing new weapon. Not only is it amazing, the upgraded version is an epic that has way better stats. But the most epic of changes so far in the profession system is the Stronghold Gauntlets, which makes the Stronghold Gauntlets from vanilla drastically stronger. Now you have immunity to disarms on top of extra stats, just making it a must-have for everyone PvPing. Warriors and Paladins are going to be fighting to make sure they get this weapon, or to get the recipe to craft it. It is amazing. I'm really excited to see what other profession changes there are. Not every profession change so far has been amazing. A lot of the new items and armor are cool, because professions overall across the board have had a massive change. Thorium, Brotherhood, Hydraction, Warlord, and many other reputations now give really solid and cool rewards for the player base to partake in. For example, the fire resistance gear sets are now actually really cool. They have spell power, healing power, defensiveness, just raw stats, everything that people need to partake in higher heat levels. I'll cover that later in the video. But on top of that, there are new weapons to craft and things just across the board that are really well done for new ults, or if your main is not caught up with gear somehow still, despite Sunken Temple being a breeze and the loot dropping in mass. But if you still need loot, some of the new craftables are really good for people to have. Not every single item change has been amazing, but again, keep in mind not everything is finished, not everything is data mined. There is a lot that is going to come out that we still have not seen at all, and some of the stuff we have seen is going to be completely changed. For example, the dungeon loot has been completely changed, but in the PTR as of right now, the dungeon loot that is in-game has not been changed at all. The stats are essentially the same, but the PTR item numbers have changed for new items. We just can't see them. We will in future PTR iterations or at launch, but until then, keep in mind everything you see could be false or could be changed. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Molten Core, and as I said, you're going to be needing fire resistance for that. What do I mean by fire resistance? In Molten Core, there are now heat levels, essentially heroic mode. Now, typically heroic mode means stronger bosses, you need to bring more people, or this or that. But so far, the heat level system is none of that. The heat level system is what we think and what most data mining shows to be a fire resistance check, where you take a percentage of damage if you don't have fire resistance at a certain level. So you need, I think it's 100 fire resistance for level 1, 200 for level 2, 300 for level 3. The heroic raid, in this case the heat level, doesn't necessarily mean more loot. You're only really going to get higher drop rates for legendaries such as Sulfurous, Thunder Fury, on top of that, Benediction, Rockdala, and Glacier/Leyra. So, I wouldn't expect to go into heat level 3 and get much more loot or better loot than people doing heat level 1 or 2, but you will get some reward for partaking in this. Even if at worst it's just a title, realistically I think we're getting a new mount that you can use in these higher heat levels that only drop from Ragnaros on heat level 3, for example. Again, that's just me theory crafting. There is no proof of that. There's no proof of any change. The developers have been very tight-lipped about heat level. So, whatever it is, nobody knows, and anybody that says factually this is what's happening is full of shit. And honestly, the heat level system is far better than a heroic system, because it keeps to the spirit of classic in that the raids are harder because they change how you partake in them. Instead of giving the bosses more health or more damage, you get weaker and you have to use more specific gear, which makes the grind more important, which makes your guild require more effort to partake in this content. So it puts the onus on you to partake in the content. Instead of having to be a better player, which you still will have to be, you have to go and grind gear to partake in these challenges, which makes it more rewarding when you do eventually finish it, and you get higher fire resistance gear, which makes you stronger overall. So once you have better gear with fire resistance, you can do more and more damage and eventually speed run heat level 3. What I hope is that there's a new mount, for example, Sulfuron himself as a mount, so you can ride the conniving like the little he is. Moving on to the Blackrock Eruption event, which is an interesting event that despite being in-game as of now, most people haven't really played it or enjoyed it yet. The PTR has been down for the past few days, so despite it being up and people partaking in it, it's an unknown entity as of this point. So to confirm what we do know, it's mostly a PvE event. There'll be 0 honor in Searing Gorge or Blackrock Mountain when it comes out. So later on, both zones will be out at the same time. But to start off with, we'll only have one of them. You get no honor when you're fighting in those zones, but inside Blackrock Mountain itself, there is increased bonus honor. And that's a really cool system overall because it means it's forcing all the PvPers to go inside the mountain, make it a laggy show where there's plenty of fighting and plenty of honor. So those 3 things are the main things we know. The other major thing we know is that you get bonus reputation with the Thorium Brotherhood and Hydraction Warlords. That makes it easier for people to get their dowsers so they can go inside and clear Molten Core. But on top of that, also makes it so you can get your fire resistance gear, which you need to get from the Thorium Brotherhood reputation. So all of this together makes it a really interesting and good system for PvE players. On top of that, it makes it much funner for PvP players. And the final thing is that there is a new spirit healer inside of Blackrock Mountain. Those are the 5 major things we can confirm from the BRE event. That's what I'm going to call it as of now. Now, a lot of people may not be a fan of it. They may have wanted a new PvP event, but a new PvE event is actually still a good decision overall, especially after the show that is known as Incursions. I also can't say how much honor you're going to get inside Blackrock Mountain when you're PvPing while the event is going on. I assume it's going to be a hefty amount, maybe 2x, 3x, or 4x the honor you would get outside, but overall, it's a good little chain. I will cover more in the coming weeks once we learn more about the Blackrock Eruption event, but as of now, who knows? Now though, we have the tragic situation at hand, and that is Phase 4's launch. When is it coming? When can we all deep dive it? When can we get in? And being honest with you, I have no clue. I originally thought it was going to be June 27th because it would make sense to do it the week before July 4th. But now we're getting so closer that it cannot be that. So then I assumed July 11th. But when I tweeted Agron asking for an answer to that question, I was met with, as you can see on screen here, he's not saying anything as of this moment because the Reddit community would roast him. He's gonna get roasted no matter what he says. I honestly don't blame him. People are really upset with him as of now because Solid Phase 4 got delayed so long, they put all the blame solely onto Agron, and it's probably not his fault at all. I am still worried about when Phase 4 is coming out because people need it at this point. A lot of people are just burnt out and may not come back at all. I do believe a lot of people will come back, but as of now, that statement is a complete uncertainty. But despite how jam-packed the content Phase 4 is, we need a release date, and hopefully that is soon. Hopefully by the time this video comes out, they give us a release date. We'll find out though. Honestly, just release it on July 4th, who gives a shit? Release it, turn off your phones, ignore everybody. Just let the drama happen. It's gonna happen anyways. Enjoy July 4th and let us all seethe and cope when we're playing the game. Moving on to the PTR itself, the PTR is in a good spot. We can't actually get into it, so I don't know if that's actually a good spot or not. Inside the PTR, there isn't that much to do. People went to Blackrock Mountain, they PvP, they tried the event a bit. People have been testing their classes and dueling each other constantly. People are testing against patchwork, or test work in this case. And overall, it's cool. But there's just not enough to really test. There's no quest, there's no dungeons, like nothing has really changed for people to actually do the proper testing. Right now, all we're giving the devs is data and damage numbers and healing numbers on what things are and how they are. So I hope that next week PTR has more content for us to partake in, or the game just comes out. And talking about people testing against each other, class balance is all over the place right now. Certain classes are just abysmally better than other classes. I can't even say factually that every class is in a good spot. Some are better than others, some are doing terrible, some are doing amazing. For example, Druid and Shaman, popping off. Go King, you do you. Most other classes, they're across the board, some are good, some are bad, some are meh. I'm not an expert in every class and exactly what they need, You can check your class Discord, or you can check the 150 new videos coming out every week about how your class is dead or your class is good now. You'll find the information you need. As a Druid player, I can happily say Druids are now amazing. Yeah, everybody else. And talking about the player base and how they're taking Phase 4 in the PTR. We have the player numbers for SOD dropping on a week-to-week basis. Not as aggressively as it was before, but about 5 to 10k people every single week. That number will eventually stabilize and stop, especially once we get a release date, as people will start to come back and prepare their guilds, communities, whatnot again to dive into Phase 4. Whereas Cataclysm is increasing on a week-to-week basis. I don't know how much more Cataclysm will increase, probably another 20, 30, 40,000 people, but there will be an eventual peak. I don't see Cataclysm hitting 500 or 600,000 players ever, in comparison to some older versions of the game, but I do think it'll hit pretty high numbers. But that number will eventually start to decline as well, especially as Cataclysm gets longer into its life cycle and Mr. Pandara's release starts to get closer and closer. SOD overall will recover for Phase 4. How much though? That I cannot say. I'm hoping at least back to 200 or 300,000 active players, but we'll have to wait and see. As it is right now, things are grim, but I am hopeful. I need to be hopeful because God, I don't want to play retail. It's an amazing game, but I also don't want to play Cataclysm. So SOD, you need to really get together. Or release Classic Fresh, that'll do it as well. Classic Fresh could be really fun. I'm making a whole video about Classic Fresh, but I'm not going to cover that in this video. What I will cover about Classic Fresh in this video is that the Classic Fresh movement is taking off and it's doing really well. A lot of people are playing on Deviate Delight, they're leveling new guilds, new characters, trying to partake in a fresh economy to a degree. But Classic being what it is, it's difficult. The best way to recapture that feeling would be full Classic Fresh servers with very minimal changes. Maybe make Paladin a little less shit, fix a few classes here and there, but for the most part, do not change Classic and give people that whole Classic Fresh experience so people can enjoy that in the meantime. I know that right off the bat, there would be at least 1 million players that would come back to enjoy it. How many will stay in the long term is debatable, but Classic Fresh is wanted by the community and their voices are being heard. You can see many streamers partaking in it, much of the community is talking about it and engaging in it, but it is still a small portion of the player base because people don't want to level up on a dead server or a dead era server. They want to play brand new, original, fresh servers. Now, there are a few other features I do want to talk to people about before I end this video. For example, Legion invasions. We know they're coming, we know nothing about them. They're not like incursions, they're a whole different system, but it's going to be interesting to see what they're like. We have seen a few little extra things on top of that, such as revamped dungeons and the whole loot rework. Again, we've seen nothing about that at all. And we know that the dungeons are being completely reworked, not necessarily the bosses, but probably their health values and the mob values, and maybe an extra boss or two here or there. We also know that Tier 1 on Molten Core and Onyxia gear is not correct yet. The values are going to be completely and utterly revamped, which is going to be interesting and hopeful for everybody once it is. I'm very excited about that loot being completely reworked and revealed to the public so we can see what's our best, what to grind for, what dungeon to do our previous in. I'm just very excited across the board and I can't wait for it. Not just the raid gear, but the dungeon gear at the same time. As for the PTR being updated, we know that there is a new PTR update coming out on Thursday, and they're trying to do it every Thursday because that's when the SOD release cadence is. It's a Thursday. I don't know if we're getting a big update this Thursday, a small one, but we will be getting a PTR update on Thursday, and within the coming Thursdays, Phase 4's eventual launch. It'll have to be before July 30th because July 30th is the War Within's pre-patch. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this episode of the ANN News Network hosted by yours truly, Ebonheart, please subscribe. It funds the network and pays for our poor reporters who are dying covering this news and getting this information for you guys' entertainment. If you don't subscribe, they're dying for no reason. Don't be that guy. Thank you all. Ebonheart out.